So let's implement the observer pattern for UFO. The observer pattern is more like control things. So under controller package, let me create another sub package called observer pattern purpose. So in observer, let me define interface called subject. It's common things about all concrete subjects. So interface should be the one, and then subject common things should provide how to attach listener to this subject, and then observer should be provided, and then how to detach listener. Then the attached observer we may be able to detach, and then we will be able to notify event when something in the subject changes. As an observer, which is interface there, observer should be able to receive event. So let's define event received abstract method there. So that's the subject and observer in observer design pattern. If I show you the diagram again, so in UFOs, subject and observers are common things about any concrete subject or any concrete observers and so on. But in this implementation, we will have only one concrete subject called the UFO. So in UFO, we already have that implementation. And UFO should implement a subject. This is the subject I defined. So here is another subject. So be careful to choose the right one. And then right one is imported. As a subject, it should implement several abstract methods defined there. So let's implement all of those. So to attach an observer, we should remember all of those observers. So we need a member variable. Let's call it listeners, event listeners. That's we need an array list of observers. There, let's call listeners. New array list is there. So array list is created. Then attaching listener means listeners add the observer provided. That's how to attach listener. How to remove is array list has a remove method. So remove the one there, and then notify means for all the observers attached, for all the observers attached, all the listeners attached. So just notify them. Event received is a common things in all observers we have defined. So as concrete subject, just notify all of the listeners by calling event received method there. So that's what subject should do. And then observer, a concrete observer. So concrete observer is the one it receives when UFO sends notification, then it does something. So this concrete observer, let's define here, and let's name it as UFO. Since we are going to create a new UFO when you receive the notification from UFO, so let's call it UFO observer, and then add a new UFO is the one it's going to do. So let's implement observer from my own definition of observer. Then we need to implement event received. So for testing purpose, let's display some message. Says UFO died. Actually, when UFO dies, we are going to receive the notification so that we could create another UFO upon that. So, if you go back to UFO, when we are going to send the notification, that should be determined. That is when state is done and eventually the UFO is will be removed. So at that time you need to send the notification. So when state done happens, then let's notify all of the observers attached to that. So notify event. So UFO died at this moment. So observer will receive this event when UFO status is done, and it will be eventually removed from the game scene. So then what you want to do here is adding a new UFO at this moment. Before we do so, let's test up to here whether when UFO dies, we will see this message on the console. So let's test up to that. So start, UFO appears. Let's try to kill it. Comes back, falls, and then dies. No message shows up. UFO state is done. Then notify event. Oh, we didn't attach the observer. So when UFO is created, so UFO is created at the init game screen, we create a new UFO. We need to attach an observer for that. So that was not given. That's why nothing happens. So for for some arrangement, let's do this way. At this moment, instead of just adding directly here, let's call a method which creates UFO added to the game data and then attach to the observer. So let's call it add UFO with a listener method. And then let's pass the XY location where the UFO should be created and added. So static void add UFO with the listener, and then let's receive X location and the Y location of UFO to be added. First, we need to create UFO. Let's create UFO with the X and Y location, and then onto the UFO, let's attach listener. Listener is a new UFO observer, add a new. So we attach this observer to the UFO just created. Then we add the UFO to the game data in enemy one. So here we just add a UFO like that. So when this UFO dies, observer listens to that and then it will print some messages. So let's test the program. Let me just double check. Add the UFO down there. Okay, good. Start. Let's see if UFO, we can kill the UFO here. Dies. Done. So UFO died. The message comes. So far so good. And then let's add a new one as UFO dies. So here UFO observer add a new. So we have defined the method in main such that by calling this method, we add another UFO and then attaching the observer. So let's make it as a public so that it could be accessed from anywhere. So when this one, the UFO died, then from main, let's call add the UFO with a listener. Let's do 100 and 200. At that location, a new UFO will be added. So let's test the program. So here we go. Let's try to kill it. Okay, it falls down. Then we have error message. The error message exception says concurrent modification exception. Sounds very weird. So we will look into that, why this happens. So the program I showed you have a logic error. So I will explain that in next video.